Dostoevsky said once, "There is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings." These words frequently came to my mind after I became acquainted with those martyrs whose behavior in camp, whose suffering and death bore witness to the fact that the last inner freedom cannot be lost. It can be said that they were worthy of their sufferings. The way they bore their suffering was a genuine inner achievement. It is this spiritual freedom, which cannot be taken away, that makes life meaningful and purposeful. The way in which a man accepts his fate and all the suffering it entails, the way in which he takes up his cross, gives him ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to his life. It may remain brave, dignified, and unselfish, or in the bitter fight for self-preservation, he may forget his human dignity and become no more than an animal. Here lies the chance for a man either to make use of or to forego the opportunities of attaining the moral values that a difficult situation may afford him. And this decides whether he is worthy of his sufferings or not. So think about that. When you get faced with this ultimate challenge, brutal challenge, when life is just about to crush you, that's when you have the biggest opportunity to prove who you are. You know, speaking of unworthy topics, but this is something when I first got to see, when I was at SEAL Team 1, I ran a communications class, and when I ran the class, I was like super hard, and sure. I know it comes as a big shocker.
Yeah.
But we would test on all these different subjects. You know, what radio, what frequency bandwidth, all these different subjects. Mm-hmm. And I would say to the guys, hey, tomorrow we got another test, another opportunity for you to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I looked at it. They didn't always look at it the same way, but that's exactly what he's saying here. When you have these brutal circumstances that you face, that's your opportunity. And if you think about all heroic tales, right? There's no heroic tales where the hero doesn't face any challenges. And as a matter of fact, the worse challenges he faces, the more of a hero he becomes.
Yeah.
If he rises to the occasion. Yeah. If he doesn't rise to the occasion, guess what? We don't hear about him.
Right. Not a hero.
Not a hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, let's say you're considered a hero, and then this big chance to prove yourself comes about, and you fail or you don't step up. You're kind of like this big failure in a way, even though you've been a hero the whole time.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Although, if you do something heroic enough, people are like good with it.
Right.
I think.
If they're significant enough.
Yeah, significant.
So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is you face these challenges and you get challenged to have this attitude of, basically good opportunity. Opportunity to solve the problems.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, big challenge? Cool. Opportunity.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's like those guys who, they start a business, the business is like grows, and then it just massively fails because of some mistake or I don't know, something, and or the economy, I don't know, whatever. And then they reach rock bottom and they build themselves back up, and then, it's this massive success.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, that's such an impressive story. Yeah,
right. That's much better than, hey, I went to this school, I graduated, I worked this job, I made a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, oh, cool. Right?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
They want to hear the struggle. They want to see that you were challenged.
Yep.
Back to the book. Everywhere man is confronted with fate, with the chance of achieving something through his own suffering. God, think about that. The suffering that you're going through is a chance to achieve something through your suffering. That's an incredible thought.
Yeah.
That's an incredible thought. Now, this next part is something that I get asked about on a fairly regular basis. Back to the book. Take the fate of the sick, especially those who are incurable. I once read a letter written by a young invalid in which he told a friend that he had just found out he would not live for long, that even an operation would be of no help. He wrote further that he remembered a film he had seen in which a man was portrayed who waited for death in a courageous and dignified way. The boy had thought it a great accomplishment to meet death so well. Now, he wrote, fate was offering him a similar chance. Whew. Yeah, I mean, there's diseases, terminal diseases, and that's it. And then what do? Well, I think you have to choose the best possible attitude you can. And again, I've never been in that situation, obviously, but that statement seems to be the best possible attitude to take. Again, that's when we see people doing something heroic, that's what we see. And it's funny, some of those, when we were doing a lot of the Native Americans on the podcast, they all had that attitude. When you go to face death, hold your head high. Be afraid of it. And that's really, like you said, easier sitting here in the recording studio. Of course.
Yeah.
Easy for me to sit here and say that.
Yeah.
But that's a hard one. And the other day on the Joe Rogan podcast, Everlast was on there.
Yeah. And
Joe Rogan, Everlast was saying, hey, I'm not in good shape right now. I wish I could get in better shape, but I have, I think he's got a back injury, and he's got this, and he's got a daughter that's got some kind of illness, bad illness. And Joe put on the good video that you made. And Everlast, when he got done, Everlast was like, hey, that's cool, that's inspirational, but how does that help me with my sick daughter?
Yeah.
What's good about that, And I wished I could have jumped through and talked to him. Because this much I will say, when you got a bad situation like that, I'm telling you right now, it could be worse. Absolutely 100%. And the fact that he's talking about his daughter and how she's sick and how he has to spend so much time with her to take care of her, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Be thankful that you're in a position in life where you can spend time with her. Be thankful that she's in a condition where she can spend time with you.
Yeah.
And she's still here. If nothing else, that's good. If nothing else. And so what are you going to do? I mean, your other option is to say, my daughter's sick, this is horrible, I got cursed, it's not fair.
Right.
And what does that do for you? Where does that get you? It doesn't get you anywhere. Matter of fact, it takes you backwards.
Yeah.
So you really, truly do have to look at these horrible situations. I remember I got a call back from overseas that a guy a SEAL was really badly wounded. And a couple of my friends were kind of distraught. And I talked to one of the guys overseas. And I at this point, lost Mark, lost Mikey. I don't think Ryan had died yet, but I was familiar with guys dying.
Yeah.
And I talked to one of the guys that was overseas, and they said, hey, this guy's really, really messed up. And I'm like, is he going to live? And they're like, well, yeah, he's stable. And I go, then don't worry about a thing. Be happy. He's alive. And it doesn't matter if he's missing a leg or two legs or whatever. He's going to be coming home, and he's going to carry on with his life. And it's going to be hard, and it's going to be hell, and it's going to be a challenge. But guess what? He's going to be here.
Yeah.
And that, again, it's like, man, what's the alternative? The alternative is he's dead. The alternative is we never talk to him again. That's the alternative.
Yeah.
Versus he's going to come back, right? And this guy, the guy that got wounded, he wasn't like a great friend of mine, but I knew I was talking to people that were very close to him. And so, I had to make sure I wasn't coming across like, hey, it's no big deal. Look, he's going to be fine. No, it wasn't like that. But look what the alternative is. Let's be thankful that he's alive.
Yeah.
And he's going to come home, and he's going to carry on with his life.
Yeah.
And that's what's important. So it's really, when you do look at these situations when things are going bad, and then you say, okay, well, what good can come of that? And then the one step further is then what happens when someone does die? Yeah. Then what good comes of that? And my thought is always the same thing. I'm thankful that I got to know that person. I'm thankful that I got to understand their personality. I'm thankful that I got to spend a day with them, laughing and having that memory.
Yeah.
That's what's good. What's good is I got to experience them in my life, and they got to experience other people's in their lives. And that's what's good about it. But just to say, hey, my friend, my family member is dead. This is horrible, and I can't escape from this. Wrong attitude. Yeah. And of course, you're going to go through that. There's the whatever those things are that you go through. It's shock, and then denial, and then anger, and then acceptance, and all that. I get it. And it's not going to be easy, but I'll tell you what will make it easier is to look at the situation and say, what here is good? And one of the worst things is parents that have young children that are terminally ill. It's awful. It's awful. And the best you can think of is say, hold them while you can.
Yeah.
Right? And get what you can and grow the memories that you can right now. Because just to focus on the fact that life isn't fair isn't going to help you. And guess what? You're right. Life isn't fair.
Yeah.
Life isn't fair. It's a random, horrible thing. And if you want to focus on the randomness and the horribleness of it, that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
But if you can focus on the good that comes out of those situations, try to. Yeah. And again, I haven't been through that. Thank God.
Yeah, not that level for sure.
But the best I can do, the best I can assess is say, man, at least try and look at what positive is coming out of this and focus on that instead of focusing on what is negative. It's going back to what Frankel said. You choose what your attitude is going to be.
Yeah.
Don't become a victim of the randomness.
Yeah, and that goes on like all levels. You know how even if like something isn't horrible, it's just kind of junk, all the way down to just something that's pretty horrible. There's still a lot of good going on in the situation, and just like how you're saying, like your attitude, or another way to put it is what you're looking for to internalize, a lot of times, and it's natural. And I've been there where it's like everything just seems bad. Even the smell, like if something real bad happens that you think is real bad, and then the same day or the next day or whatever, something small bad happens, it'll just add big time to the badness. Like nothing's going right, kind of attitude. Meanwhile, all the good things are going on all around you, but you're not looking for that.
All those things.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times with like real bad situations, especially with kids, because that's like the most weak you can ever feel, really. When like your kid, like when my daughter she had a big staph infection, MRSA, in her lymph node. So her neck was big. She was in the hospital for a week, and we're there. That's like the most weak in that you'll feel in. Of course, there's way worse situations.
Yeah.
And than that. That's nothing compared to situations. I know that, but there are good things that are still going on in your situation, your life. That's A. B. There's good situations that can come of it. And a lot of them are strength related. Like if you let something beat you down and you don't get the strength, like that's a loss. You'll lose. Like you'll.
So you're saying you're getting some kind of conditioning from it?
In a way, in a matter of speaking, yes. So like if you have a quote unquote good attitude, when you emerge from the situation, you will have strength now. If you don't, you won't. You'll have weakness. You'll be, gun shy. Everything happens bad. My life sucks, and you'll continue down kind of that road. So the good part, like how you said, if you keep that good attitude, and when you make it out, you will have this. Among the other good things that can come from it, you will have the strength.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, just look at Captain Plum and look at Colonel Reeder, and for those guys to go through what they went through, and maintain a positive attitude, and then they come out and you talk to those guys and it's like you can't think of more positive people in the world. I mean, not in the whole world, but they just have so much positivity because they've been through something and they had to maintain that attitude. So you're right, when they come out it's like, how are you going to make, and I think that's what happens a lot of times with guys that have been to war, is they come back and they're like happy to see the sunrise. I know I am.
Right.
I'm happy to see the sunrise. I'm happier than a lot of people to see the sunrise. I appreciate that thing.
Yeah.
And I think when people go through some kind of devastating disease in their family or themselves, same thing. Once they get through it, they at least come out the other side and they can appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yet, if they let it beat them down, everything is gonna look down. If you're looking down, you're gonna look down. If you're looking up, you're gonna look up.
Yeah.
And that's got to be it's hard. I mean, it's so hard for people. It's so hard.
Yeah, and again, I'm over here talking,
Yeah, for sure. Both of us are. When I was on Joe Rogan, we started off talking about Chris Cornell had just killed himself. And we kind of cursory talked about depression. And neither one of, I mean, I definitely am not claiming to be any kind of expert at all about it. And I even said on there, I was like, look, I've never felt this way. And I had a couple people hit me up on social media like, you should read this, or you should do this, or you're not right. And I'm like, no, I wasn't even trying to say anything that I'm right. I was saying, I don't actually even know.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not, certainly an expert on how to overcome, horrible situations, but I've been in some pretty horrible situations, and this is what my thoughts tried to be.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy at all.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson has some good content on that, where he's basically, in a nutshell, he says, get yourself together. Where in his example, one of the many was, a family member dies or whatever. Get yourself together. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to wallow with the rest of the people so no one can get a hold of anything and the funeral's a mess or whatever? Or are you going to get yourself together? Grieve, for sure, but get yourself together so you can kind of lead and get the funeral together and take care of the business or whatever. And
it's such a cold-blooded thing to say, right?
Yeah.
It's the complete, and that's what I think is hard about it, is, think about this. Oh, if someone in your family died and I was like, Echo, get yourself together.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who says that, right? But that's probably the best thing I could possibly say to you. Yeah. Now, I might need to say it in a more tactful way. Right. I might just say, hey, Echo, man, I feel for you. Hey, man, what we need to do is grieve, but we also need to focus on moving forward. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the reality is, what am I really saying? I'm really saying, hey, get yourself together. You got to move on. We got to move on. We got to move forward. You got to move forward in your life. And that's such a hard thing to say to somebody.
Yeah.
But that's probably the right attitude to take. Is okay, like, this is horrible and I need to keep it together.
Yeah, man. Especially when there's no majorly prevalent things that are at risk at that moment as well. Like, like your situation, like in a combat situation, I think BTF Tony was talking about this, if like you're in a firefight or something like that and someone gets hit, you don't just exit the firefight and be like, oh my gosh, my guy's hit. It's like, okay, he's hit. Boom, let's continue the firefight. But let's say there was no firefight. Then the guy gets hit. It seems like a harder thing to just move on and
so what you kind of need is you need to have a firefight going on so that you can say, okay, I'm going to deal with this, but I need to also think about the rest of life. Right? So hard, and again, it's you know what I'm feeling like right now. I get some social media sometimes where someone will say, hey, I'm not a vet, but like a friend of mine is going through problems and I don't know how to talk to him because I'm not a vet. And that's kind of like what I feel like right now. Like I haven't been through those kind of suffering, so I'm throwing darts, but I'm throwing them based on what I know, so it's the best I can, best I could do right now.
Like you're at risk of someone saying, hey, you simply don't understand. Right. And the fact is they're right.
Yeah. And my statement to that would be, yes, I don't understand. Yeah. It's like when I was talking to the veterans saying, look, people, you feel like people don't understand. They don't. Yeah. And that's okay. So definitely not sitting here saying, oh, I know this is what you do in a situation like that. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do when your family member suffers something egregious like that, like a terminal disease or death. I don't know. Haven't been through it. What I have been through is losing guys in combat. That I have been through. This is darkness. It's a different kind of darkness. But this is what I did in those situations. And that's what I would think would help you in these other situations.
Yeah.
Hard.
It's just the question, right? What do you do?
Hard. And we are sitting here reading a book by a guy that was in a concentration camp, and he's saying this thing to do. So that's another sort of reinforcement of this thought pattern.
Yeah.
All right. He talks a little bit about the passage of time here. In camp, a small unit of time, a day, for example, filled with hourly tortures and fatigue, appeared endless. A larger time unit, perhaps a week, seemed to pass very quickly. My comrades agreed when I said that in a camp, a day lasted longer than a week. How paradoxical was our time experience. And that's something, this actually reminded me, I was talking to Sarah Armstrong, and it was actually around the conversation when Leif was talking about, he'd come out here and seen all my kids. My kids are all grown up now, basically, except for my littlest one. But, my oldest daughter's graduating high school in a couple of weeks, and she's going to go to college.
Adult.
And, when Leif met her, she was, what was that, 12 years ago? So she was,
5.
No.
5, 6.
6, something like that. So,
younger than your
And when he
youngest.
came out here, he had just left his apartment in New York City where he's got his wife and kids, and it's chaos, and the little kids, and they're crying and screaming and spilling stuff and throwing up milk and pissing everywhere, and it's just that's what life is when you're a parent. And he came out here and saw how my kids were now grown up, and that time is gone. By the way, gone. Can't get it back. And he he talked about it on the podcast, just, hey man, make sure you appreciate those. And Sarah Armstrong said something along the lines of, the days are long, but the years are short. And that's a very true statement. And you can see that here it's the same thing. All of a sudden this time is just going by so quickly. This is starting to talk again back to the attitude. We could say that most men in a concentration camp believed that the real opportunities of life had passed. Yet in reality, there was an opportunity and a challenge. One could make a victory of those experiences, turning life into an inner triumph, or one could ignore the challenges and simply vegetate, as did a majority of the prisoners. Same thing, same topic. I know what's interesting, and I told you this before we started. This book, is a great book, but I kind of wanted to talk about how bad concentration camps were, and I went and found some other sources for that, because Viktor Frankl doesn't highlight it that much. I mean, he was in Auschwitz, for crying out loud. It doesn't get any worse. And to really give the impact of how bad it was, I went and found some other sources that were a little bit more directly written and a little bit more horrifying, to be lack of a better word. Because in his accounts, he doesn't go into some of those graphic details, which I feel like you should know and you should understand before you talk about, hey, he's keeping a good attitude. But no, it's not he's keeping a good attitude because he was in a concentration camp, but it wasn't that bad. No, it was freaking hell. Yeah. And that's what he's dealing with. And in his mind, you could make a triumph or a victory out of those experiences, which is an incredible attitude to have.
Yeah.
Going back to the book, the prisoner who had lost faith in the future, his future, was doomed. With his loss of belief in the future, he also lost his spiritual hold. He let himself decline and became subject to mental and physical decay. Usually this happened quite suddenly in the form of a crisis, the symptoms of which were familiar to the experienced camp inmate. We all feared this moment, not for ourselves, which would have been pointless, but for our friends. Usually it began with the prisoner refusing one morning to get dressed and wash or to go out on the parade grounds. No entreaties, no blows, no threats had any effect. He just lay there, hardly moving. If this crisis was brought about by an illness, he refused to be taken to the sick bay or to do anything to help himself. He simply gave up. There he remained, lying in his own excreta, and nothing bothered him anymore. And that's similar to what Colonel Reeder said, how if you didn't actively stay alive, you would die. You couldn't just passively exist. You weren't going to make it. If you wanted to die, all you had to do was stop trying, and you were going to die. Back to the book. As we said before, any attempt to restore a man's inner strength in the camp had to first succeed in showing him some future goal. In Nietzsche's words, he who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. That could be the guiding motto for all psychotherapeutic and psychohygienic efforts regarding prisoners. Whenever there was an opportunity for it, one had to give them a why, an aim for their lives, in order to strengthen them to bear the terrible how of their existence. Woe to him who saw no more sense in his life, no aim, no purpose, and therefore no point to carrying on. He was soon lost. Got to know why you're doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And that's all there is to it. He who has a why to live for can bear with almost any how. And obviously that translates right into leadership perspective, making sure people understand why they're doing what they're doing. You just don't bark orders at them. But from an individual perspective, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. Find that. Mm-hmm. And I actually made a post on social media the other day, and it was something along the lines of finding your inner why or something like that.
Sure.
And I was mocking that attitude.
Right.
And I was saying, sometimes my inner voice is trying to find out why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm like, when I'm doing something hard, my inner voice doesn't allow to talk. Be quiet. I'm over here working.
Right.
Yeah. But there is, obviously, just like a leadership perspective and from a personal perspective, why are you doing what you're doing? And that should be the driving force.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, it's hard to overcome these challenges. You can't just overcome challenges just because, they're there. Yeah. You need some greater reason.
Yeah.
And when that gets lost, you get lost.
I don't know why I thought that was fun. I think why you were mocking that, this is my why and my inner voice.
Yeah, it wasn't. Now that I think about it, it wasn't really the why thing.
Right.
It was more about the inner voice.
Oh, the inner voice.
But yeah, no, I definitely said why in there too.
Because I think people use it's like a lot of good expressions or sayings or whatever, or people just, I like that, and they'll just start throwing it out and abusing it, and it dumbs it down, and then now everyone's saying it. Now it just sort of sounds cheesy because no one's actually doing it. No one's actually understanding the real what it really means. Like the person who's like, hey, I'm going to lose weight. And, they've basically spent their life neglecting their health or whatever. Then they're like, okay, I'm going to get in shape. And then they go on this, program, they quit, but when they're doing good on the program, let's say the first or second day, they'll be like, this is my why. And they'll show their dog or something like that. My why, or my kids or whatever, But then the next day they quit the program. It's such a weak thing. You're like, whoa. You can't just do that. That whole thing, my why or whatever, that's way too powerful for people to just be like, hey, my why, and then just not do it.
It shouldn't be just like a little thing. Yeah, you can't just throw together a 38-second Instagram post that's about your why. Yeah. Then you need to dig.
Yeah, you got to do that stuff. So that's why it's funny because people just throw that out now. Now it means nothing, and it's almost like they see. It seems like it's totally my interpretation of it, but it seems like they're saying it and thinking that they sound so profound and deep and new and inspirational, But everyone's saying it.
And to counter your point, I've had plenty of people that have talked to me about, I was in bad shape. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't healthy. And I had my first kid. And I said to myself, I need to be there for my kid. Or I was doing bad at work and I didn't really care and I wasn't focused on my career and I wasn't focused on being squared away and I was wasting all my money on dumb stuff. And I had my first kid.
Yeah.
And then I said, I gotta, this is me taking care of my kid, and I need to do a damn good job.
And that's exactly the point there, is that it's a real thing. And if that's for real, your why conceptually now. I'm just saying the expression,
for sure. But there's a big difference
there's
a big difference between the contemplation that goes into, I'm doing this for my kids, cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on Weight Watchers, right? It's like, no. Yeah. Like, think about this. Think about your relationship with your children and where you're going to end up and how you want to see them live and what guidance you can give them as human beings and the example that you're setting for them. And you line all those things up, then maybe you can put down the donuts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly right. In other words, you got to do it, actually, So, that's why it just sounds cheesy because everyone does it or says it.
This is a great section going back to the book. We had to learn ourselves. And furthermore, we had to teach the despairing men that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us. We needed to stop asking about the meaning of life and instead to think of ourselves as those who were being questioned by life daily and hourly. One answer must consist not in talk and meditation, but in right action and right conduct. Life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets for each individual. Again, you're flipping this idea around. It's not about what I want from life. It's what does life want from me? And it's putting these challenges and these hurdles in front of me, and I got to go and jump over them. And then I got to smash them. And then I got to set fire to them. And then I got to use that fire to fuel the domination of everything that's in my path.
Is that kind of like, hey, these weights aren't going to lift themselves?
It's the exact same thing. Yeah.